Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Daily Reflections with Awake and Aware Eating and Living. I've taken a couple days off from the daily reflection, which was really good for me to just be. I did a lot more being, although I did play some golf and did some other fun things. Went up to Warner's Lake, which is a lake I grew up near with my sister Julie, and listened to a band and just had a fun weekend. But I wanted to talk today, and I'm going to be doing the Awake and Aware Eating and Living meeting at noon on reframing painful emotions. Looking at the experience of painful emotional reactive patterns getting kicked up as something positive, as a time to heal those emotional reactive patterns, a time to release the energy that's stored in us. One of the things that I've read, and I read this from Michael Singer, who wrote a couple of really great books. One was called The Untethered Soul, and one was called The Surrender Experiment. And he talked about how emotional reactive patterns that we have are simply stored energy within us that we stored from experiences that we went through. And we stored them for one of two reasons, in Michael Singer's opinion. One reason is because we didn't like the experience at all, and so we tensed up and we ended up storing that energy instead of letting it just pass by. And the other reason is that we liked the experience so much that instead of just experiencing it again and letting it pass by, we held on to it wanting to recreate it or relive it or redo it, which isn't really possible to have an experience repeated exactly the way it was. And so I liked that thought process. I liked that theory on what emotional reactive patterns are. You know, I had gone to therapy for decades and thought that, it was wounds from my childhood, it was my inner child, and that is a way that some people really like to look at it. And it didn't really sit with me after many years of looking at it in that way. It didn't sit with me anymore. I felt like, nah, it's not really my inner child. It's me. It's all of me. And that experience may have happened in childhood, but it's not like I have an inner child inside of me. But I do have those stored experiences. So again, whatever's helpful for you, if it's helpful for you to look at it as an inner child, then of course do that. If it's helpful for you to look at it differently, then find a way that is. So, but now when these emotional reactions happen, a couple of things that I've learned to do over time is to not blame whoever is causing or triggering the emotional reactive pattern. So if my husband says something and I feel really scared or I feel really jealous, it doesn't mean my husband did anything wrong or that he said something that would cause that, but it did cause it in me. But I can really detach now from where it came from and not blame them and not think they're wrong and not feel like I have to make it stop. Or make them stop or make them change. And I can instead just identify it that this is something stored within me. It's okay. I'm not bad. I'm not wrong. And I can be with it until it passes. And usually it passes really quickly if I don't work up a lot of story around it. If I don't make the other the bad guy and create a lot of story like he doesn't really love me, he doesn't really care about me, oh, she did that because once I get into all of that stuff, it doesn't let the painful emotion energy release it all. It actually just keeps it there, and I usually am dumping more into it. And so again, now when painful emotions come up, and they still do for me, very much so, I can see them like, okay, this is stored energy in me. It's from a previous experience, and I can just sit with it, be with it. I don't have to focus on the other or whatever brought it up. but I can just focus and be with me and be nurturing and tender and gentle and know this is a good thing. This is coming up to be healed. It's coming up to be released. And I've noticed as I've really practiced this that things that used to really bother me, they don't anymore. And emotional reactive patterns that were really common for me happen less and less frequently. They come and go much more quickly. And I'm able to bring this practice to others who call me because they're in emotional pain, others who reach out in any way and want support. I can, help them be with whatever's happening and to not judge themselves and not judge the other. Because again, that just dumps a whole other layer of crap into the situation. But to instead help them, release it by being with it, just let it pass through and come back to the present, come back to the now, and know, they're fine and that these emotional reactive patterns are fine. It doesn't mean they're not healthy. It doesn't mean they're not spiritually fit. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that they've got some stored energy within them. So I hope that helps. We're going to be discussing this at noon on the Awake and Aware Eating and Living meeting. And if you ever want to join that meeting, if you don't have access to it or the number, I don't want to give it out to the general public, but you're more than welcome to email me at awakeandawareeatingandliving@gmail.com, and I'm happy to share the phone number and the access code. We do have community meetings that are free, community support, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at noon. And then we have this beautiful meeting on Sunday on deepening your spirituality, and all traditions, all practices are welcome. And that's at 8 a.m. on Sunday. So again, if you want any information on those, you can contact me at awakeandawareeatingandliving@gmail.com. So I hope everybody has a day where they have lots of awarenesses, lots of awakenings, where they're able to move a little more deeply into their being instead of the doing.